So, believe it or not, we are like 4 games away from the end of this video course on the Dutch Leningrad. I hope you enjoyed it up to now, and you will let me know if you need more games, more example games, or explanation upon something. The next game, it's Van Velde-Loek, when Van Velde was kind of a top player, 2646, against Barev Eugenie, 2709, and it was played in the Fujitsu Siemens Masters Rapid. So this is a rapid game. However, we don't know when was played because it doesn't give a date. Okay, so Van Velde starts with d4 and Barev begins with f5, our favorite move. g3, knight f6, bishop g2, d6, knight f3, g6, castle, bishop g7, and now we have a move that we have not seen before, which is kind of typical for a rapid, because in a rapid you want to surprise the opponent, right? b4, boom, incredible, right? Castle. You see, however, before it's kind of very different from c4. c4 you open the queen, b4 you are controlling or helping to control these two. I don't know. And of course there is the fact that now you can actually develop your dark squares bishop with bishop b2. c6 is our normal formation that we have seen up to now, game after game, more or less, apart those that started with knight h3, f4. In that case we would play knight c6. And so this is the formation we want, our tabia. And now white plays c4, knight a6, queen b3. Here we see the problem of this diagonal, because this pawn has been moved. Knight c7, knight c3. With this move, white has finished the development, okay? Because the rooks are in connection, contact. So instead, if you see black has still this to move, so it's at least 2 tempi behind, okay? 2 tempi behind. But obviously the thing is the pawn formation that we have, and the thing is that black needs to defend in some ways. For example, now black plays king h8, which makes total sense, because avoid any kind of discovery check at the moment that we don't like it, right? Now white continue with d5, but it doesn't make much sense, d5, because you made all of this advance on the queen side. So I don't understand honestly why white didn't play this. Since you are clearly attacking on the queen side, why do you dilute your game going toward the center that you have nothing in the center? Doesn't make sense, right? I don't know. Obviously Van Velde is a top GM, or he was a top GM in that moment, because 2650 is clearly one of the top GM in the world, top 100, right? So he surely knows his job, and yet this to me doesn't make sense, okay? e5, d takes e6, bishop takes e6. As you can see, already in this moment, the black position is not bad. It's not bad at all. Because now all that huge pawn formation is gone. It doesn't make sense. Now we have 4 against 3 on the queen side. I don't know. It doesn't make much sense. Then he continue with b5. Instead, since we have this all here, maybe centralization would have made more sense, right? And this open also this. So this knight d4, in my opinion, make more sense than b5, okay? To me, just me. This my opinion. And then you can obviously see the difference. Maybe I'm totally correct on knight d4 and Van Veli is totally wrong, but Van Veli would know how to capitalize on such a move, and I maybe don't. So that's at the end of the day the reality. C takes b5, knight takes b5, knight takes b5, and now you have queen takes b5. I don't want to tell you guys, but clearly there is already a problem here, right? He plays a6, and white has to go back, because can you see what happens if white plays queen takes b7? On queen takes b7, the easiest move you see is rook b8, and you have behind a bishop. So you take here, but he takes not only the bishop, but he controls the second rank. So I don't know, it doesn't make much sense, right? So with queen b4, I think white came out of the opening and in the middle game not in a good position. Why do I say that? Because it's true, this is a back foot pawn isolated, but also this is isolated and this is isolated. Instead, here black has a good pawn formation if he can keep it. I don't know if he will be able to keep it. By the way, I didn't see the game before, because like always I try to be as much as natural as I can, okay? So if I would see the game before, maybe I would know what are the problems. Instead, like this, I can make mistakes, but at least they are genuine mistakes, right? And when they are genuine, you can identify yourself in those mistakes that would also happen in your tournament games, and so you really want to see them. Okay, so that's my reason for behaving like that. So after queen b4, obviously black plays a5, which is a typical move in the Dutch, no matter which type of Dutch. Let's keep in mind that there is also this. This is a situation that is very strange. Queen b5, again, you cannot touch this, otherwise you lose this. Rook c8, starting to aim at this, because 1, 2, okay? And what happens here? Rook a c1. This makes sense instead of moving this, because you want to take away the rook from this diagonal, okay? Queen e8, trying to entice the queen into an exchange. If it exchange, obviously you take with this, because you want to attack here and you want to continue to put pressure on this, okay? Obviously, white doesn't want to give a tempo to black, like queen takes e8, rook f takes e8, and so black has gained a tempo in positioning a rook on a semi-open file. So what does he do? He plays knight d2. Why knight d2? Because if this is taken, at least he can still continue to control something, or at least he's bringing the pieces on the queen side and opening the diagonal for this bishop. Obviously, at this point, once you exchange the queens, it's difficult that you will have an attack on the king side. So that's why it makes sense to try to move the pieces on that side. Black obviously takes, and here, once you know that he has the light square bishop, you want to position your other pawns on the dark squares, because you avoid them to be a target, okay? On the other hand, white has the light square bishop, so it tries to fix the pawns on the dark squares and see if he can use this bishop to attack them. But knight d7, right? So at this point black is trying to say, okay, I have fixed this, but I don't want you to have this, because if you have this you can actually attack them, so let's try to exchange them. And that happened. Bishop takes g7, king takes g7, perfect. Now there are only these on the light squares and he has a light square bishop, so he can attack, but this light square bishop cannot attack this. The one who can attack is this knight. Okay. When you have an outpost in the enemy territory, you try to use it to exchange pieces on there to eventually have a pass pawn. Okay, so white continue with rook c6. Once rook takes, obviously you don't take with this, but you take with this. Why? Two reasons. One, this is a pass pawn, so someone must block it. And the pawn that is valid 1 point, if it's blocked by 3 or 5, you understand that the enemy is using 5 points to stop one. Second, as you can see, opening the B file help white to attack this backward pawn. So that's the reason why you take in this case with a pawn. Knight c5, attacking this, rook a1, rook c8, knight b1, obviously is repositioning the knight to defend, so he can use the rook to attack, knight e4, cutting the connection, f3, and of course here you should have calculated the line with bishop takes e4, because bishop takes e4, f takes e4, knight c3, attacking this. Then d5, protect that and continue the attack on this, but then you have rook d1 attacking d5, and when he takes, you take with the knight. Okay, so that is the way probably. I hope you were able to visualize this 3 move and a half variation, but it's very important that you do it also in your games, because sometimes you cannot move the pieces, right? After f3, knight f6, knight c3, rook takes c6, knight b5, bishop d7, because there was a fork, e4, f takes e4, f takes e4, and rook c4, attacking it twice. Knight takes d6, attacking this, rook takes a4, rook f1, obviously this is a kind of rule of the endgame. This is an endgame, and black has an advantage, right? He has an advantage here. In reality, the advantage is big, because you say, but it's only 1 pawn. Yes, but these 2 pawns are connected. When they are connected, if they reach here, they are worth a rook. So that's important to know for you guys. But with that said, the thing is, in the endgame, if you are down material, you don't want to exchange, because that would give the opponent an advantage, right? You want to keep your pieces in the game, and you use them the best you can to create problems to the opponent. So that's what's happening here. Okay. Okay, so he played rook f1, bishop e6, because obviously he's trying to take control of the squares where the pawns will be, e5, knight g4, bishop h3, knight e3, which would have forked both of them, right? Bishop takes e6, knight takes f1, king takes f1, and rook a1, check. King e2, a4. Once you have a pass pawn, what do you need to do? Push, push, push. Because as soon as he reach one or these two squares, they become very, very powerful, difficult to stop. Bishop d5, because he also want to push this, a3. And notice that there is a little thing. If he makes a2, rook b1, you take, he can give you rook b2, a check, and take the bishop away. So that's why he's still pushing very fast, okay? e6, now black, to stop this, needs to take control of the square, and so it's a mess, right? King f8, knight c8, and now he's obviously trying to say check, and then I give you another check, and I promote. Rook c1, very interesting, and the knight takes b6. a2, bishop takes a2, like I told you, rook c2, king f3, rook takes a2, h4. Now white has a big problem because it's a kind of difficult to survive against a rook, but if white is able to exchange the pawns and enter a knight versus rook endgame, it's a draw. And I have played that kind of endgame. Is not difficult. The idea is you must not really separate the king from the knight, and they defend each other, and it's impossible to win. Not only it's impossible to win, practically with 40 seconds increment that you have in the FIDE tournament for the, I don't know obviously for this one, but now they give you 40 seconds for each move. You are practically able to write the move and play the correct move without losing the game. Knight d5, king takes e6, now things are going a little bad. King knight e3, rook a4. Rook a4, it's interesting because it cuts the king from going forward, okay? Knight g4, h5, knight f2, king f5, because he can give check and he's sending back, knight h3, rook a3, king g2, rook b3. So this is just a move that asks white, what are you going to do? Okay, knight f2, king e5, knight h3. Now white is waiting to see what black does, because he thinks I have a fortress, and let's see if you can dismount it. Yeah, he will be able to dismount it. King e4, knight f4, rook b6, defending the pawn g6. Then we have king h3, like I told you, he thinks to be in a fortress. Rook f6, knight e2, rook f2. You understand the problem now, right? Knight c3, king f3, knight b5, and now you just want to cut the knight, and that's the point. You see, the king cannot really move. You cut the knight is going to kill himself practically, because unfortunately it's a kind of weak piece against the rook. Rook d2, and nothing. Here the game ended. but it says another thing. It seems that he could have played rook g2. This is an analysis that I found. Knight d4, king f2. This is kind of interesting. Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, because now he cannot really do that. So what does he do? Knight e2 to defend this. King f1, knight f4, rook a2, knight takes g6, and king g1, and this is really terrible because it's giving checkmate. Okay, so what does he do? If he does this, it's checkmate. Okay, if he does this, checkmate. So look how beautiful it is, this end. But okay, probably this was calculated in a fraction of a second by an engine. 4-move checkmate, 5-move checkmate, probably it would have taken 10 minutes, but this was a rapid game. And maybe White also lost for time, because we are at move 58. Okay, I think you enjoyed this beautiful game by Van Veri that lost against Barev. That was one of the greatest attacker. Let's go to the next game.